fast forward through undergrad here and through graduate school here, and I had gotten my PhD and was out on the job market and was very gung-ho. There was two places in particular that I interviewed at that I remember after the interview really thinking, wow, this is the place I want to be. This is fantastic. And one of them I will go ahead and admit now, although I might not admit it again in the future, is MIT. And I had a fantastic experience there. I just thought the students are great, the faculty's great. I would love to be a faculty member here. And I didn't get the job. And there was another research lab that was in Pittsburgh. So I remember coming out of that interview thinking, I made great friends here. There's all these people I've been keeping in touch with. This would just be a fantastic place to be. A couple weeks later, I get an email from them saying, unfortunately, we can't offer you a position. It makes you think about what are the things that you thought were important? What are the things you valued? What were the things that you saw in some of these things you wanted to do that gave them importance or value to you? And that's still with you. How can you use that in terms of the decisions you make, the next step you want to take? Because it's not the end of the world. It's not like, I didn't get this particular job offer that I wanted. Well, now I'm going to go crawl into a cave and, throw away my PhD because that didn't work out. It turns out, sort of fast forwarding the history a little bit from there, this, Just Research lab, which I thought was this fantastic lab to be in, closed down a year later. Because they were having financial troubles. A friend of mine said, why don't you look at this startup? And so I did, and ended up, it was a good group of people, so I ended up going there. And this was back in 1998, height of the dot-com bubble. Things worked out unexpectedly. And then I was going to go back and teach, and I was all ready to teach, and exchanged a few emails with a friend of mine from grad school, happened to be named Sergey Brin, said, we're working on this company, we're getting a lot of traction, and this never would have happened if I hadn't been on the West Coast, but I happened to be out here. After that, sort of a position which was the childhood dream job in some sense at Stanford opened up, and I applied, and again, didn't expect to get it, but it sort of worked out. And I think this whole sequence of events, which I think ended up getting me to the place, realistically, that I probably, it is like being a kid in a candy store. I feel like in the end, everything kind of worked out and it fell into place. And part of the reason why I did was because despite some of the rejections along the way, it created other opportunities that weren't visible at the time of the rejection. Now, I can't say what would have happened if, with Just Research I can because the company folded. With some of the other options, I can't say what would have happened had I gone there, but I can say that the net result is I feel extremely happy and extremely fortunate with where I ended up. And I can still remember how I felt at the time I got those rejections or things didn't work out the way I expected them to, and thinking they were such a big deal at the time. And in retrospect, looking back on them now and thinking that all they were in some sense were learning experiences. And if I could take away the learning experience from that, it would help move me along and make better decisions later. A friend of mine said, why the situation you're in seems like such a big deal right now? I said, because it is a big deal. Why? And he said, because you haven't had the experiences to put into context of all the other big deals that are going to happen. And that made me take a step back. And at the time, I didn't fully appreciate it because I hadn't had the other big deals. And now I realize he was right. There's going to be a lot of other deals that are going to be bigger deals, are going to make this thing sort of dwarf in comparison. And the other piece of advice I got was a friend of mine said, go do the thing that you think you're going to learn the most from, because that's the one thing that no matter what happens to you, you're going to have and no one can take away. In your career is not your first job. It is not your second job. Your career is not a grade that you got on a piece of paper. Your career and your life and the things that you do is a series of events of which some of which you have no control over and many of which you can't even see right now. But the things that will help you make good decisions, the things that will help you get to where you want to go is the experiences that make you realize what's important to you, because sometimes I think people delude themselves as to what's really important to them. And at the same time, also the experiences which make it easier to open some of the doors later on. So that's what I've gotten out of it. And I still feel like, it's been all these years and now I'm kind of at my childhood dream job, but I'm still learning every day. I feel like I'm learning from my students and the experiences that they bring in, and that's why it's so reinvigorating to be here. But the learning never stops, and I'm sure there will be other rejections along the way, and the perspective to take on them is it's a rejection, but it's also a learning experience, and it's also just another step in what's going to happen.